Keying an input gives you the ability to remove a background color and replace it with another background. In the TriCaster, we do this with LiveMatte, and every input on the switcher has its own LiveMatte with independent controls. There are a few things you can do to improve the quality of the key you pull. First, make sure you use the best video resolution and format from the camera that you have. High definition will always look better and pull a better key over standard definition. Many cameras will output several formats, including composite in standard definition and component video in standard and high definition. For this TriCaster, the best video format is component, then YC, then composite. High definition can only be brought in as component. Make sure to manually white balance the camera, turn off auto white balance, auto gain control, and auto focus, and control these things manually if possible. Make sure the on-camera talent is not wearing the background color. Even eye color can be an issue. The keyer can key any color. The most common colors to use are chroma green or chroma blue. These colors are used as they are the farthest away from skin tone. Backgrounds can be painted walls, colored cloth hung on a rack, or a pop-up color screen. Wrinkles on cloth can cause shadows on the backdrop, and this is not desirable. If you are using a green screen, then make sure the talent is not wearing any shade of green. Lighting is important when trying to pull a good key. The trick here is even light on the backdrop. Even light is better than bright light. You want soft light on the backdrop to avoid any hot spots. The best situation is to light the backdrop separately from the talent. Evenly light the backdrop, avoiding hot spots. Move the talent away from the backdrop to avoid shadows on the backdrop from the lights on the talent. Now, in some situations, you have to light the backdrop and the talent with the same lights. The same rules do apply. Shine even light on the backdrop and the talent. Try to avoid shadows, but sometimes you can't if you only have a light or two. The LiveMatte keyer in the TriCaster is great and will remove most shadows. It will work in situations that other keyers will not, but there are limits. Now let's pull the key with LiveMatte. Coming in camera 1, we have a green screen shot. To access LiveMatte, click on the gear for that input. Click on the LiveMatte and Crop tab. The first thing you need to do is pick the color you wish to remove. Left-click on the eyedropper and hold down the mouse button. Now drag the cursor over the colored background you're trying to remove. Notice you can see the color swatch changing as you drag over colors in the interface. When you are over the green, let go to select it. The LiveMatte will turn itself on and the green will disappear. Now by default, the input has a black background, and this may not be the best for setting up a key, especially if the talent is wearing black. There is an easy way to use any background while pulling a key. Click on the V1 buttons on both Program and Preview. This should select the V1 tab in the lower left. The V1 tab is the setup area for Virtual Input 1. Now, in V1 Setup tab, you have Input A and Input B rows on the Virtual Input's internal switcher. Input A is foreground and Input B is background. Place the input you're trying to key on A. Place Graphics 1 on Input B row. Now go to the Graphics 1 tab. There are a variety of pictures available in the TriCaster content. If there are no images in this player, load some by clicking the Add button. Clicking on any image in the player places it in the background. Try placing different images in the background until you get one that's got some nice contrast. Now, go back to the LiveMatte controls for Camera 1 by clicking on the gear in the Camera 1 monitor. The two controls under the color picker allow you to adjust the key. Tolerance allows you to adjust the range of color picked to be removed. More tolerance removes a wider range of green hues. Smoothing tries to smooth out the edges of the key. Start out by setting both tolerance and smoothing to 0. Start with tolerance and remove the background. Now bring up smoothing to smooth the edges on the talent. This may bring some of the background back. Add a little more tolerance. Go back and forth between these controls until you dial in a great looking key. There are also controls for spill suppression. These will remove any spill from the color screen that's spilling back onto the talent. Now the two controls that you have are tolerance and smoothing, and they work very much like the tolerance and smoothing controls you use when you're pulling a key. Also, have the talent move and turn left and right, as these changes might affect lighting and that could affect the key. Each set of LiveMatte controls also includes crop. The crop controls draw a hard line in from the left, the right, the top, or the bottom, and removes anything from the input not being keyed outside of the crop line. So as you can see, the edges of this stand-up shot are not covered by the green screen. These can easily be removed using crop. Bring in the crop line from the left and the right until the unkeyed edges are removed. This is great if you are working in confined spaces with small green screens. Once an input has been keyed, you can see this right on the interface. Notice the input has a green light on. This indicates LiveMatte is in use. The blue light indicates that crop is in use. There's also a yellow light indicating that the proc amp is active. These functions can also be turned on and off by clicking these lights like buttons. Let's go ahead and key the other green screen inputs. In this example, I have a single shot of Kiki, a single shot of Rex, and a 2-shot of the both of them, keyed and ready for use in a virtual input. There are a variety of effects possible with LiveMatte and virtual inputs. As a default, a virtual input sets up as a basic A over B key. The keyed talent is on A, and the background is on B. Choose any input of the TriCaster as your backdrop on input B. A live input, DDR video playback, still or graphics, even key live talent over web pages or presentations coming in from an external computer using a network input as the background. Now you can use the positioner on the A row to scale and position whatever is coming in on that input. In this case, it is our talent. In the virtual set input setup area, click on the crossed arrows icon at the right end of input A row. Using the magnifying glass icon, you can left click and drag to scale the input size. Then use the crossed arrows icon to position it anywhere on the screen. You can also click and drag on individual axes. By default, the axes on the scale tool are locked because if you scale on one axis, you distort the image. The lock can be turned off by clicking on the lock icon. There's also a reset button to undo any changes you have made within the positioner. You can also reset individual variables by holding the Shift key down and double-clicking on the numbers for that variable. This will reset that single variable back to its default value. Now, whenever a positioner is being used, you can see an indicator light next to the positioner launch icon, letting you know that it's active. Above the A input row, you have an overlay row. This is an overlay for that virtual input and will only appear on that virtual input. Go to Graphics 2 and load the NewTek logo with transparency. This is found in the Stills area in the NewTek session. It is the one with a gray background. Select Graphics 2 on the overlay row for Virtual Input 1. Hit the Take button just above the overlay row. The logo appears on the virtual input. You also have a positioner on this row to scale and position the overlay if you like. This overlay will only appear on this virtual input, allowing you to set up a layered effect without using the downstream keyers. Once this composition is set up in the virtual input, it is accessible like any other input with the click of one button. This allows you to use the 4 virtual inputs to set up 4 different effects that you can easily switch to during a live show. The virtual inputs can also be used to create virtual set effects using the included live set virtual sets that come with the TriCaster.